Namaste, everyone. Today, we're going to go over Strangers from a Different Shore by Ronald Takaki, Chapter 7, Struggling Against Colonialism, Koreans in America. Your learning objectives is to learn about Korean Americans' early migration history, learn about Korean contributions, and learn about Korean struggles. Now, they came to this country, Koreans, they came to the United States when? Well, they came at similar times to right after the Japanese and Chinese came to, of course, where? Hawaii. And one of the second big destinations was the Central Valley, California. One big place that they went to was Ridley, California, which is in Fresno County. It's a small area, and they did mostly farming area. Another place they went to was Dinuba, California, where they had a huge impact in terms of farming. Now, they were very mistreated. In fact, I went to a librarian kind of conference in Dinuba and Ridley recently, and the librarian who was recounting their lives about the Koreans in the area couldn't get across her speech because she kept crying because she was talking about how they're so mistreated, etc. So very sad. So when the Koreans came, they were mostly male. Other Asians came along with Koreans, and they actually, a lot of people don't know that the Koreans reworked the ground of Central Valley, and they made that arable land, or not arable land, and they made it arable. They made it enabled to grow. So the true beginning of Asian Korean Americans happened in the Central Valley. They worked next to Japanese and Chinese. But of course, during the war, Korea was taken over by the Japanese. And so that actually created a lot of tension between the workers, as well as Korean Americans at this time, or Koreans living in America. They spent a lot of their time saving money and also saving money to send back to Korea to actually free the country of Korea from Japanese colonization. Now, two hidden figures in Korean American history are the Kim brothers. Now, the Kim brothers, they made many orchards in the Ridley County and Dinuba, and their goals was to be the first Korean millionaires in the USA. And with the help of a scientist and Korean immigrant knowledge, they put a peach and a plum together. They're spliced together, and what do they have, guys? And which, people don't really give them credit for. They helped develop. That's right, the nectarine. It's so incredible, the influence that these Koreans had on American food. Now, a lot of hard fruits are actually from East Asia, and a lot of people don't give that credit to those groups. So who are these Koreans? Who are the history? Well, it was a small community. Koreans numbered around 1,677 in 1920, and 20 years later increased 1,711. Koreans were mostly mistaken for Japanese, and something that, of course, irritated them because their country was taken over by Japan. And they were people without a country for a while because, again, their country was colonized. Now, they were seen as strangers from a different shore, and so they experienced widespread racial discrimination. Lots of ethnic antagonism between the Asians and white workers, so very sad how the Koreans were treated. What did they do? Well, in Utah, they worked on copper mines. In Colorado and Wyoming, they worked in coal mines. In Arizona, they worked on railroads. Also, there's Koreatowns. They owned stores, wholesale restaurants, services, churches, schools, commercial networks. And Alaska, they worked on the salmon fisheries. Now, where? Well, they left their homeland sometimes to go to Hawaii, then remigrated to Colorado, Wyoming, and the railroads of Arizona. And a big place that a lot of Koreans came to is the San Joaquin Valley, also known colloquially as Central Valley. Now, places they went to in California were Dinuba, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Manteca, Riverside, Lompoc, Washington, Chicago, Illinois. So lots of different places these Koreans went. And of course, we talked about it, the Kim brothers, they developed the fuzzyless peach, better known as the nectarine. So delicious, especially if it's kind of like roasted a little bit. Combination of peach and plum, just delicious. Unfortunately, what Koreans experienced in 1992 was the LA riots. Rodney King was intoxicated and uncooperative, and he was being arrested, and he was beaten by LAPD with excessive force. And this led to several groups of people having riots in all over California, particularly LA. Now, at the same time, there's a Koreatown in LA, or better known as K-Town. A young girl, I think she was 14 or 15, Latarsha Harland. She's an African American girl. She went into a Korean store, and she was grabbing a a bottle of orange juice, and she put it in her bag to kind of maybe possibly pay for it in the front. And the Korean grocery store mistakenly thought that she was trying to steal it. And so she's going away, and there was some altercation between them. So there's some physical altercation. And then the Korean grocery store, when the girl was running out, she shot her in the head and killed her. So that also created the LA riots, and that was a huge thing. I invite you to Google that on YouTube. It's very horrific. You see that the Koreans were on their own, and they were just fighting for their lives because they called the LAPD and no one came to help them. And so again, lots of things have happened for the Korean American history, and it's ongoing, interesting history. So what is now? Well, we have the future of Koreans. Koreans are becoming more Americanized. They're drifting away from their roots. They're losing knowledge and interest in their parents' culture and feeling distant, abandoned. Now, this has changed a little bit from the when this book came out, because now there's now new post-1990s and 2000 Korean migration. And with the whole new BTS movement and K-pop, I think that is actually switching over. A lot of people now are very interested in Korean history. All right, so today you learned about Korean American early migration, you learned about Korean contributions, you learned about Korean struggles. If you have any questions, please come to me in class.